And meeting is officially recorded. Hopefully Kabila is okay. Now let me check the on-air screen. It's not what I want.
I'm not sure. Let's see.
Okay, so we're up against the news. So we'll be starting just very shortly.
Okay.
And what's up, the legal ID? Which at about 15 seconds. Then we'll officially start. KLK 102.5 FM. Good morning to you on your Tuesday. It's September 22nd, 2020. This is Community Conversations. Kate Wonder is here with you, and we are waiting for Kabila to join us on our Zoom call today. And we have joining us via Zoom today, we have Shawn Only. She is the Democratic candidate for the Arkansas House of Representatives, District 53. And of course, as always, I have to get a disclaimer. Kaylee K and the Voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council. We do not endorse, support, or oppose any candidate for office. These interviews are provided for informational purposes only. But as always, we do encourage you to exercise your right to vote. Election day is November 3rd. Early voting starts October 19th. We have until October 3rd to register to vote. So please do not delay. Get registered to vote and vote. If you are concerned about COVID-19, go ahead and request your absentee ballot now and return it as soon as possible so that you can get your ballot back in time, and make sure your vote is counted. So as always, we start off with our candidates. So Shawn, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, good morning, KLEK and your audience. Thank you for having me. So about my background, I'm Shawn Only, and as you know, I'm running for State Rep District 53, which includes Jonesboro, Brookland, Black Oak, Caraway, Lake City, and Monette. My background is that I am married to my best friend, Ron, of 32 years next month. And we have three amazing daughters that we are very proud of. Our youngest daughter is a junior in college studying psychology. Our middle girl is a senior in college. So glad about that. And she is a environmental engineering major. And our oldest daughter is an educator in DC, and she finished grad school at Harvard last year. So we are very proud of the amazing young women that we have raised. I have a bachelor's degree from the respected University of St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas. I spent 20 years working for some of the most respected private law firms in the country as a legal secretary and as a legal assistant, so I'm very familiar with legalese. Then I transitioned to work with my husband, who is a physician, to manage our private practice. So I understand what it takes to run a small business. And I have spent over 20 years working with my political party, working as a worker bee for the most part. And over the years, I've had many people ask me to run for office, and I didn't feel it was time yet. And then when we settled here in Jonesboro, I saw some things that I felt I could give my talent and my education and my experience and my volunteerism to. So that's a little bit about who I am.
All right, so we now have Kabila joining us, and we'll let Kabila ask the next question.
Hello, Kabila.
Good morning, Shawn. How are you? Thank you for joining us. apologize for my tardiness. I just want to start out by asking, have you had a chance to look at some of the issues that Arkansas faces that if you are elected, you would like to tackle or address?
Well, I think the main issue that we're all addressing, not just as a state, but as a country, is COVID-19. That is, I think, the big disease in the room that we need to continue to tackle. The other thing is, of course, locally, we had the tornado in March, and that devastated our stores and our airport, and the combination of the two of those impacted our jobs and our everyday lives. And so I would say that those are the two main things that we need to continue to tackle for our district.
Okay. I am pulling up and I apologize if you mentioned this before. You have a Facebook page
I
that
do.
people can go to find out more information on your platform, and it is Shawn Only, SHAWNONLY, for Arkansas House District 53. Okay, so let's talk about some other issues that are, I guess, I don't want to say personal to you, but bringing it back to Arkansas. Other issues you recognize, or issues that we've talked about before when you were in the primaries. I am still going through your page to find a specific one that I wanted to bring up, but I want to make sure to get the ones that are important to you that people need to know about.
I'm sorry, repeat that again, Kabila.
Okay, I know we just talked about the COVID issue. That's very important. And then, okay, let's talk about then healthcare, medical coverage, benefits, things of that nature. I was listening to some commentary on another platform, and people were talking about individuals who have dealt with COVID now have pre-existing conditions. So
Right.
going forward, what is medical coverage going to look like or entail for those individuals as well as others?
That is definitely something that is of concern to me, to, I'm sure, every citizen, every American. Um, this has really turned healthcare upside down because and it's clear now the importance of having health insurance, because yeah, those pre-existing conditions are really important, and especially now with COVID. And it's, as I understand it, there are going to be some long-term heart and other conditions that people will suffer from. And if we were to get rid of that, that would just be devastating for so many families. And so, what we have to remember, this is an opportune time for those who don't believe that we should have the Affordable Care Act. This is a key time to really revisit that and recognize the importance of having health coverage, of making sure, because the impact on our community, the financial impact. I mean, just imagine how much it costs the state, the private insurance, just all the different avenues that we have available to us to get health care and to take care of us. Just imagine the impact that has had. And so we've got to address pre-existing conditions, and we really need to hold on to that, because it's frightening, the prospect that we're still in this pandemic, and we just don't know what the future holds for this pandemic and how it's going to impact us. And so we really need to figure out how we take care of individuals and hold on to that, because it doesn't just impact the individual, it impacts the entire community. So.
Well, Shawn,
Indeed.
also too. Oh, go ahead, Q.
No, I just said indeed. Thank you for that.
Well, Shawn, following up with that, of course, in the state of Arkansas, we have Arkansas Works that expands access to health care to people. But in recent years, there have been attempts to scale it back or to eliminate it completely. So if you are elected to the legislature, how will you fight to continue that so that people can continue to have Arkansas Works?
Well, I think that's a matter of what committees you serve on as a legislator, and also and what bills are brought forth. So I would definitely commit to doing, well, I'd have to, of course, see the bill first, whatever bills that are introduced, but I think that we need to make sure that somehow we provide that, rather not provide, but that private health insurance is available to everyone. Because again, as I stated before, especially with this pandemic, you had too many people who didn't have insurance. Those who do have insurance, I mean, it just, that the cost is just incredible. So I would be for assisting in any way that I can to make sure that Arkansas Works, that people have access to private insurance and to health care.
All right, let's go to the Facebook Live comments. Shanquetta Cunningham says, "Hey, Mrs. Shawn, hashtag women lead. We continue to elect representatives who do not do anything, in all caps, for our area. She will represent us with excellence, and then 4 blue hearts." And shout out to Patty Cheney Lackford checking on our live feed. Jeff Wisham says, "Do you plan on going around to the cities in your district to introduce yourself to people, maybe at their city council meetings?"
Actually, I have been out there. I started getting back out there, even though, I'm one of those people who takes COVID seriously. I don't think it's a hoax. And so I take it very seriously, but I have been out there introducing myself there. I've been in many of your neighborhoods. I've been in several of the towns in my district. So, and I, of course, visit the city council meetings online. And so, yes, I do intend to continue to do that, to visit with people directly to stay on top of the city council meetings and whatever other meetings take place in the city. I have attended other meetings in the city. So absolutely, I intend to continue meeting everyone in my district.
Backing up to earlier, you mentioned about you would have to see a potential healthcare bill, and it made me think, and this was a question that we asked your opponent yesterday, what are some bills that you would like to actually introduce yourself if you get elected?
Well, so I have a few, pardon me, a few bills in mind, but first I have to, when elected, I have to see what is already on the table. We've got to go through the process of learning exactly what's already there, what's already being introduced. Some that I have in mind is that we're going through here in my neighborhood alone. The fact that I live on what's considered a county road, but that county road is crumbling, and my neighbors and I are responsible for fixing it, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. And so there's an issue with builders here, coming in, building a home, some shoddy, and then, their companies go defunct and their bonds expire. And then it's up to me and my neighbors to figure it out. And I think things like that need to be addressed. I think things like the fact that we bought our daughter a used car, and we didn't discover until we were getting the plates for the car. I'm sure you're familiar with this. And the taxes were due at that time. and we weren't aware. So I think there's a duty to inform from car sales, and at that time, so that people don't get to the when they apply for their tags, discover that there are taxes due. And then if you don't pay those taxes, a lot of people don't realize within, I think, that 30-day period, then you start getting fined for it. So it's things like that that are things that I would consider. Also, there was a bill by Representative Jimmy Gazaway that I feel very strongly about, and that's having minimum housing standards. And I believe that he'll bring that back. You know, we've had discussions about it, and so those are just a couple of things that that I would be interested in initiating. Well, of course, Jimmy Gazaway has already initiated the minimum housing standards, but in terms of builder responsibilities, county responsibilities for roads, those kinds of things I would be interested in initiating.
Shawn, along those lines, you mentioned about the minimum standards. Obviously, you know, Arkansas is the only state in the union that does not have a law that mandates that landlords have their houses to a minimum standards. Would that be a potential bill that you would introduce once you got established?
Well, I don't need to introduce it because it's already been introduced. It just needs to be brought up again. And so I would support that bill that Jimmy Gazaway has already introduced, should it reach the floor again. So yes.
All right, going back to our Facebook comments. Jeff Wisham says, I am on the city council in Lake City. I was just wondering. Gladys Camise, hopefully I pronounced that right, says, hello, Shawn. Rebecca Laura Evans says, good morning, Shawn. Thank you for running.
Well, thank you all.
All right, we'll go back to Kubila for the next question.
Okay, I was looking through your page, and I saw another topic that I think is very vital. There's been a lot of talk about police reform, and I know that some changes have to be made on the state level before they can, I don't want to say trickle down, before they can take effect on the local levels. So what are some things that can be done on the state level, one, to ensure police are getting proper training or getting the proper support? I know that we've heard and seen commentary about, well, the police need mental health professionals to either work along with them, ride along, whatever the case may be, to help some individuals to hopefully reduce and prevent more unnecessary deaths and things of that nature. So what can be done on the state level when it comes to police reform, as in reference to their practices?
Well, I think that we definitely need reforms nationally. You know, I respect and appreciate my police, because I'm not interested in policing I'm not interested in having militias and vigilantes. So we do need our police department, but we do need reforms within, and we definitely need more training. Some of the things that that we need to should be considered, of course, as you know, is getting rid of the chokehold, or you know, definitely making sure that we have more training, making sure that that police who are not following the rules as they should be are no longer part of those police departments. We shouldn't have the blue wall of silence. That's so important. And again, this is not a slight on. This is we need to work together with our police, and we need to stop making them like teachers. You know, the catch-all for all the ills of our community. And we definitely need to address mental health, because especially right now with COVID and everybody, you know, not having access to each other. We need to address mental health, and we can't we shouldn't put that on our police departments, because they're not equipped to do that. And if they're not equipped, we need to make sure that we have the professionals who should be addressing those issues address them.
Speaking with Shawn Only, Democratic candidate for the Arkansas House of Representatives, District 53, we're getting ready to go into our first break, but the conversation will still continue on our Facebook Live feed. So if you're on Facebook, we got plenty more to come. And if you're on the radio, we're going to still have plenty more to come just after a short break. So don't go anywhere. This is Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. All right, so we're inside of our first break. Is there, Shawn, was there any issues that you wanted to bring up in the next segment? Any particular topic?
Not in particular. You know, I do these so infrequently that I will just go along with the program that the questions that you intend to ask.
Okay.
Go ahead, Q.
No, so I want to bring up, I don't want to say prison. Well, yeah, prison reform, since we do have some prisons in Arkansas. And then felony, I don't know if you would call it reform, but.
Are we still on Facebook?
We're not on the radio. We are still live on Facebook.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
But bring up, you know, what can Arkansas do? I know that there are individuals and committees working to try to help individuals with felonies. And I know it also depends on the type of felony. And I'm not naive to a lot of things. It's just, and I know not everyone will be allotted the same privileges due to the extent of their crime. I just want to know, and again, we could talk about this when we get back on air, you know, what are some things you have either noticed or maybe some things you are looking into if you are elected in reference to felons, prison reform, because we all know that once someone is given a chance to rehabilitate their life, they become a different and, dare I say, better person, a more productive person in their society, in their community, rather. So we could talk about that a little more if you like when we get back on air. That's just one topic.
And we have, let's see, we're inside of the life strategies announcement. So got about 35 seconds until we return to the radio. We'll resume the interview.
So, Shawn, what has been some of the issues? I know you said you had a chance to meet some
15
of the
seconds, everyone.
Oh, okay.
10 seconds to rejoin. And we're back on KLEK 102.5 FM with our guest, Shawn Only, Democratic candidate for Arkansas House of Representatives, District 53. And if you have a question or a comment, you can leave them on our Facebook Live feed. Just go to KLEK 102.5 FM on Facebook and leave your questions and comments. And we will be happy to ask the candidate the questions. Because again, this is what we do here at KLEK. We want to make sure that you have access to those that are running for office so that you can be informed on the issues. And got a Facebook shout out to Derek Coleman. Derek Coleman says, "Good morning, KLEK and Shawn. Thank you for running." So we'll go to Quabila for our next question.
Okay, so we were talking a little bit about prison reform. Well, I was rather prison reform and what help can be provided to felons that have met all the requirements to basically get their life back on track. If you are elected, what are some things you would like to see done, or what are some proposals you would try to make? I I know that you would have to go up against many other representatives, and it's not as an easy process. It's not an easy process as many of us would like to think, as far as getting bills and proposals passed through the House. So again, I apologize. What are some things you would like to see done, or what are some things you would like to do to work on to accomplish in reference to prison reform and helping felons get their life back on track and reenter society?
Well, I think that that is very important, criminal justice reform. You know, I know that that Trump introduced the First Step Act, and while I appreciate those types of acts that that um, have have been created, um, there's an issue when a lot of um, felons, former felons, get out, and it's and finding jobs. I mean, I think that that is the biggest difficulty, and so we need to offer, truly offer them opportunities. You know, I was trying to recall what that is. I think it's something like check the box, which so that you don't have to indicate that you're a former felon, especially if you're a nonviolent felon, and of course, if you have done your time, etc. Those we need, I think we should make sure that we get rid of that. I think that we need to close private prisons. I think that we need to address the Fair Sentencing Act, which is, you know, those who are who've had offenses for crack versus coke. You know, it's basically the same thing, and so, you know, evening the not playing field, but evening the penalties for those things. You know, it's the person who is, you know, dealing drugs and on that low level versus, you know, the person who's in a suit and, you know, dealing them at the office. You know, there are different penalties. So we absolutely need to address criminal justice reform and make have job opportunities available to former felons. I would say that also the time on when they can vote again I think should be changed. Because again, once you have served your time, you've paid your debt to society. Why are we? Well, we know why. They have to wait. You know, they have to wait on getting that voting right back, but that's important. So it's things like that, making sure that they really have legitimate job opportunities available to them. Because if you don't, if you have all of these barriers in place for them, then what options do they have available to them? What are they going to do? Are they going to continue to try to be their best self, or are they going to resort to what landed them there in the first place? So we do need to address that because it's for the good of our society.
All right, thank you so very much for that issue, for that this comment. Thank you. I was still looking for some other issues, and I do agree that something has to be done. I've known people that have gone to prison that had a very hard time just getting some basic things reestablished in their life, and they were overall, I say, a good person. I know this person. I know the person personally, and I'm not going to get into details about the issue they were accused of. However, some things came to light, and it was a lot of false accusations. Long story short, they still had a hard time getting their life back, even after the truth really came out. So I would love to see even some reform all the way down to how things are handled in the courtroom, and a lot of these cases not being just rushed through. And I know that probably comes with talking to the judges. Um, in these courtrooms, but that's neither here nor there. Moving on. So what about, I want to go back a little bit and talk about the housing issue. And I apologize for going all the way back. I have talked about this issue with some of the city council candidates because that's an issue that's important to me. I've lived in Jonesboro over 20 years and I've seen many developments come up and many people or families kind of get pushed around and pushed out of their neighborhood. So what exactly, for those who may not know, what is the Fair Housing Act? And then what can be done as far as reinforcement on the local level for the state of Arkansas?
I'm sorry, you're asking about the Fair Housing Act?
Well, the act, the bill proposal, the act that you brought up earlier, that I think this is Representative Gazaway.
Well, that's not the Fair Housing Act.
Okay.
That is that's having minimum housing standards.
Minimum housing standards. Okay.
Yeah, and that has to do with landlords not having decent housing available and not fixing just basic things, running water, utilities, and mold or whatever it might be. And if it's not in your lease, you're sort of out of luck. And so those are things that there's no reason why anywhere in the United States and in Arkansas that anyone should have to live in those conditions. If they are renters, we should have more respect for our fellow citizens than that. But in the same token, I think that as a landlord, they ought to have some laws in place that protect them too, because no one wants to rent their property and have someone destroy it. And I know that to be an issue as well. And that was part of that. I think it was House Bill 1410 is what Representative Gazaway brought. And so, yeah, that's. So I don't know.
Okay. Well, I guess my next, follow up to that would be, if you are elected, what are some ways you would try to inform the residents of the area you represent of not just that particular issue, but all the other things that Arkansans face, so that they don't become railroaded or bombarded if they face that particular issue, and now they're having to go to the Arkansas Supreme Court, versus the local court system to try to get something resolved.
Okay, well, I think that we all have a responsibility to our community. As a member of the community, I've always made it my business not to, you can't wait until something becomes a law to complain about it. You have to be involved from the beginning as a member of your community. So I think that we all have a responsibility. As a legislator, I would make sure that whatever is going on in session, that my constituents are aware of it. As you know, I do have a Facebook page, and so I would take advantage of social media to make sure that my constituents are informed of what's happening, because typically the squeaky wheel gets the oil, but and that's is it fair? Is it not fair? Sometimes you have people who just don't know how to go about finding out what's going on, but we have so much available to us so that we are aware of what's going on. I mean, when you look at the amount of people who attend city council meetings or the various meetings that go on around town, you see the same people there. And so again, we all have a responsibility to our community and to find out before things happen. There's so much information out there. There's so many ways to get that information and to be involved. I mean, just watching our local news, you can find out what is happening. And so, but again, as a legislator, I would make sure that my constituents are aware of what bills are on the table and how I plan to, on their behalf, vote on those issues. And it
Got
will
a
be,
comment.
and it will be
Oh,
based
sorry.
on, and it will be, of course, based on, what my constituents want, because it's not about me, it's me representing their, needs.
And going back to our Facebook Live, we have a question from Derek Coleman who says, hopefully we can get some legislation that will allow former prisoners can get their rights restored. So definitely a topic that has some interest amongst our listenership.
I agree with that. I agree.
All right, so going on to some of the issues that are going to be on the ballot, wanted to get your views on the issues. The first is issue 1, which will continue a half-cent sales tax for transportation. This would actually make that sales tax permanent. What is your stance on that issue?
I'm absolutely for it. We can't have crumbling bridges and roads, etc. And when you calculate it, it's really, I mean, we waste just on a daily basis so much money. And listen, I'm not interested in increasing taxes. Who wants their taxes increased? But you get what you pay for. And so, I want smooth roads, and I want safe bridges. So I am for that issue 1.
All right, what about issue 2, which is term limits? It says changes term limits from 12 consecutive years for state legislators with the opportunity to return after a 4-year break.
I'm for that as well. I think that we need term limits. We have too many people who have been in office for too long. It's always the bad seeds who ruin it for the good ones. So we need a change in guard. We need to get rid of the status quo. So we absolutely need term limits. As much as I'd love to represent my constituents for the full 16 years available to me if I were to win for 8 terms, that would be great. But, we need to have term limits because it especially right now with the current environment, we need a change.
And we have issue 3, which is direct democracy in state legislatures. This would change initiative process and legislative referral requirements. Basically, change how proposed amendments are placed on the ballot.
Yeah, we absolutely must vote against that because that just that impacts my rights as a citizen. And I think that there are sufficient, the current requirements for petitioning are already just huge. I mean, people, it's currently I think it's 15 counties, and it will, triple. That 15 counties is already significant, and the reach and the amount of people that you need to petition. So I would absolutely be against, that changing that petition process.
And of course, an issue that is very likely to come up again in the next legislative session, is the Stand Your Ground law. It was defeated by 1 vote, which was Senator Cooper's vote in the last section. Of course, Senator Cooper will not return to the legislature next year, so it's likely that it will be tried again. So what can you do in regards to the Stand Your Ground issue if you are elected?
Well, I don't agree with Stand Your Ground, and for the same reason that Senator Cooper didn't agree with it. It was that duty to retreat before using deadly force. that to me, that language, it's so important to read the language in all of the bills that are introduced, because it's language like that, just that one sentence, that one clause rather, that makes a huge difference. And so you'll have situations, we have situations that include police, not pertaining to our police here specifically, but just nationally, where they had an opportunity to retreat without using deadly force, but they used deadly force. We have citizens who have had an opportunity to retreat without using deadly force, and they didn't. And that's very concerning, and we absolutely cannot have legalized murder. We've got to get rid of these loopholes. And, again, we all have a right to defend ourselves. We have a right to bear arms and protect our family, ourselves, our family, and our home. But we need to be careful about the language of a lot of these amendments and bills that are being
Got a comment from Sherry Tusif. He says Shawn only will be the voice for all of the people of District 58. We'll go back to Kabila for the next question.
I want to talk about education. I know that we are in a very unique and stressful for the parents and teachers time when it comes to how they're having to deliver education at this moment. Although we don't know what even next month will hold, because of where we are, has this given you any ideas on how to introduce maybe some legislation, sorry, um, in reference to, in the event of, here are some things that we need to put in place, instead of waiting until a tragedy or waiting until something major happens and then we're scrambling trying to put these pieces together, and then everyone's kind of in a, I don't know, confused state of mind and stressful state of mind when it comes to educating our children. um I'm more specifically, virtual learning versus in school learning. Like, I don't know. I apologize to all the parents and teachers that I don't understand what you're dealing with exactly. I don't have any children in school right now, but I can understand the stress level because I am a parent as well. I don't know.
Okay, and we have 90 seconds for Shawn to answer it.
Okay. Well, sorry.
Well, it is a challenging time for our students and for our educators, um, and I'm just thankful that we do have virtual learning available to them, because it is a critical time and we need to take this very seriously. And I know that our educators are working harder, more than ever, just trying to manipulate virtual learning. In it, as I mentioned, our oldest daughter is an educator of fifth grade students. So I'm a big, supporter of our teachers, and I'm also a supporter of making sure that our community remains safe. Our children, we have to make sure that they're safe, and so that's a decision for parents to make on what they're most comfortable with, and it's a decision also for our teachers to make. We need to make sure that they remain safe, because we have had teachers around the country who have lost their lives to COVID. So school cannot be a daycare, is what it can't be. So we need to make that decision about sending our children back to school, because strictly for educational purposes, not for daycare purposes.
And we got to leave it there, Shawn. We're getting up against our break. We're speaking with Shawn Only, Democratic candidate for Arkansas House District 3. Back in a little bit. This is KLEK 102.5 FM.
To extend the conversation just a little on that, I've seen.
And of course, the conversation does continue for everyone on Facebook Live.
Thank
I've
you.
seen some people say that we have had time, like we as in not me, but we, the states or the legislators or the individuals that have control over making the decisions, they have had time, especially over the summer, to put something a little more organized in place instead of here we are about several weeks away from when school was starting to everyone's trying to scramble and make a decision. Um, I think outside of the box a lot, which is good or bad, any way you look at it. But I just feel like there are so many corporations that probably could have donated, and not to say they haven't, but donated to the cause of making sure all students have laptops, making sure all families have the basic internet they need to run the programs they need. Like, again, I don't have a student in school right now, but I am very concerned and compassionate about the needs of my community members because I am a parent. And I know if my child had to go through what the children are going through now, I would have been highly stressed as well.
Yeah, it is a stressful time. I can't speak to what corporations, we don't know what their financial position is, and yes, that would be for good. Some corporations did contribute to to ensure that our children have what they need. You know, it's a difficult time, and we're all trying to figure it out and to navigate it, and so. Um, we do need to figure out our current legislators on how to address this issue. And yes, we shouldn't wait until the last minute, but that's leadership. You know, that is had we had the governor introduce the mask mandate early on and listened to the scientists and the doctors at the beginning, we might be at a different point so that our children and our educators aren't having to figure this out at the last minute when school starts on how to do this.
Well, and,
Yes.
You know,
and it's time to go. And it's time for us to go back.
Okay.
And we're back on Community Conversations on KLK 102.5 FM with our guest, Shawn, only Democratic candidate for Arkansas House of Representatives, District 58. Quavila?
Sorry. Um, we were talking about education. Another topic concerning education I wanted to bring up, and I don't know what influence the state has on this, but the curriculum, the core curriculum. There are some people who are not pleased with it, saying that it is very, I don't want to say basic, but it's almost like you're teaching kids to take a standardized test, which doesn't truly measure their knowledge because all students learn differently. And so some would say it's an unfair method of teaching and testing. What can Arkansas do, or what influence does Arkansas have when it comes to the statewide education, the statewide curriculum?
when you say influence, what influence does Arkansas have with?
Or I don't want to say power, that sounds, I don't know. What changes, well, I guess for lack of a better word, what power does Arkansas have to implement changes in the current curriculum?
Well, what I would say to that is that when you look at where Arkansas stands nationally with education, it's clear that um, we definitely need to address the level, the curriculum that is being offered. We need to challenge our students. We need to challenge our educators to make sure that we are nationally competitive and globally competitive. So, and I am not a fan of standardized tests. I think that our educators are spending too much time um, uh, planning for the test rather than educating our children on, you know, obviously they need the basics, because when you look at the you know, this generation, there are those things that I recall, you know, in school learning that are just life lessons, you know, home economics, you know, is something that I had. And so those basics are important. Those core curriculum um, um, classes are important. But you know, it's time to really challenge our students and challenge their parents. And so so I'm against standardized testing. I think that we need to spend more time. And you know, old school, you know, the way that I learned to, you know, add, multiply, divide, you know, um, um, and subtract. You know, they've changed that the way that they do that. And you know, not to say if it's not broke, don't fix it, but that actually worked. I mean, the steps for doing that before were just fine. So again, with respect to your question on the basics of our core curriculum, we need to challenge our students and demand more of them so that they can be competitive, so that they have opportunities available to them when they finish, you know, high school.
I'm glad you brought that up. I do a lot of reading on different platforms. I don't always post a lot on my own platform, but I do read quite a bit. And I remember reading some more conversation about how American children, not to say all, so please no one come for me, but for the most part, American children are not up to par with students on a global level. They learn differently, they have different curriculum, they have different standards to their education. And so they're prepared at even younger ages on certain topics that our kids do not even get introduced to until maybe their junior, senior year in college. You
Yeah.
know, so I would love to see a little bit more reform in that aspect. I have in my master's program, it has an emphasis in education piece, and we learned quite a bit about curriculum development and different educational topics and educational models. And I
Mhm.
would love to see some different models even introduced to the parents as an option. Let the parents have a choice in how their children learn as well. Going back to my child, he's not a sit down, listen to lecture type of child. He needed some different elements to really grasp the concept of the lesson that was being taught. So anyway, that's my 2 cents for the day.
And we also need to increase our science and math and science in this country. We need to really focus. We need to definitely make sure that our children are educated in math and science, because we're losing that battle to students who are coming from other countries, who are, that is their focus in other countries, on making sure
Mm,
those are the things that you know, make major industries in our country work, and especially just in software, you know, and internet and all those things that we use on a regular basis. We need to make sure that we are educating our students there.
yes, ma'am. Okay, so going forward, um, I know that again we are in unique time and space. Or do you have any via virtual or in person meetings that where people can get to know more about you and ask you questions directly?
You know, it's been interesting. You would think that there was only one candidate running, um, but there are two. I'm running, and there's another. You know, I have an opponent. So So I do have one forum coming up with Kiwanis, and that's on October 5th, I believe, from noon to 1. And so that will be available, I believe, through Zoom or Facebook Live. I can confirm that and get back to you. But that is the only forum that is coming up, and and understandably, as I'm coming to you through Zoom, because yes, these are interesting. These are critical times, and we need to continue to take all the necessary precautions.
And of course, we also have a debate with the District 53 candidates scheduled for October 13th, and that will be on this same forum right here. So you definitely got to tune in for that. Let's see, how much time do we have left? Okay, we're getting to our last 3 minutes. So, Shawn, anything else that we did not cover that you want to say to the listeners?
Well, I think it's important to take this time to make sure that voters are aware of those 3 ballot issues before they get to the voting booth, to know how to vote on those. I think it's important for felons to make sure that that they contact the county clerk's office to determine whether they have had their voting rights restored, because every vote counts. And also, I understand from a meeting that I had just last evening that those who intend to vote via absentee ballot should make sure that they have 3 stamps, because from what I understand from the ACLU, if you do not have sufficient stamps on your absentee ballot, they are being discarded, and voters are not being informed of it. And I would also make sure that voters realize that once you choose to vote via absentee ballot, you absolutely cannot vote twice. You cannot, as you have been instructed to do from the top. So those are critical things that voters need to be aware of. And if you decide to vote in person, make sure that you wear your comfy shoes and bring your chair and bring your lunch and maybe dinner, and be prepared to stand in line and fulfill your duty as a citizen of this country, because we should all be heard and our vote should be counted. So I'm most concerned about our voting issues and changing the current guard, and I ask for your support in November, because I am qualified and capable to lead. My background, as I mentioned earlier, I'm very familiar with legalese. I have a bachelor's degree, and I've been in politics and volunteered for over 20 years, and worked with some of the best law firms in the country. So I ask for your support on November 3rd.
Shawn, we thank you so much for that. We got to leave it there. Of course, Kayla Kay, the voice of Arkansas Minority the ethics against. We don't endorse, support, or oppose any candidate for office. These interviews are provided for informational purposes only, but we definitely encourage you to exercise your right to vote and wear your mask if you do vote in person. You guys have a great and blessed day. This is Kate, LEK, on 2.5 FM. All right, let's get it stopped on the radio. I'm trying to do this from my iPad, y'all. Okay. Radio is stopped, and now let's go to Zoom and stop the recording and the Facebook Live feed. All right. Recording stop.